Our show is supported by viewers and listeners just like you on patreon.com/SAASholes. Brent Keltner's Winalytics Revenue Acceleration Playbook Masterclass. In only 8 weeks, help your sales and go-to-market teams start to build the mindset and skills needed to succeed in the new buyer environment. Weeks 1 to 3, read the book and learn a new approach through 20 successful company stories. Week 4, all go-to-market team kickoff and receive self-reflection questions and mindset self-assessment. Weeks 5 to 7, collaborative sessions with prospecting, sales, and customer success on the shared journey to a new mindset. Week 8, all go-to-market team presentation and discussion. Winalytics, build the revenue organization you want. Request a free 60-minute growth consultation at winalytics.com. Ask for Brent and say Big Pete sent you.
Steve Bosset.
I thought I would match Jamie since he's got the Chicago background. I'm going to throw up the Golden Gate Bridge background.
Where are the tents?
Mine's real.
Tents. You mean in San Francisco?
Yeah, it's pretty intense there, I hear.
Intense, a little pun. No pun intended, right?
Oh, totally intended.
They don't allow them on the bridge. You know, they're all south of Market.
Over the
I
bridge.
like to concentrate them around the large convention center, Moscone Center, right? So
Yeah.
The park near me has been on the news locally a lot of times lately because of the tents. They've just started creeping up more and more. But the Chicago winter will get them to leave.
Exactly.
We have the weather.
You have the weather that helps in
Yeah, the government is all like, oh, we're encouraging them to move. And I'm like, yeah, just wait till March. Wait till February. They'll move.
Exactly.
Send them to Martha's Vineyard. So, boys, are we going to split the atom today?
Sure.
I saw some interesting questions from Mr. Carnac.
I did, and I was thinking, we kind of touched on some of those, right? Last week. So I think Jamie and I were talking about it'd be fun to dive in really deeper, right? Just kind of
Deep.
get straight
Yeah, I
in.
mean, I think the real topic, like Steve and I were talking, like reps nowadays, I don't think are really good at qualifying or disqualifying as quickly as possible. Like I think everyone latches onto a deal and is like that Dumb and Dumber moment where what are you saying? I have one or a million, one a chance, a million to one chance. So you're saying I have a chance. You know what I mean? Like as opposed to realizing quickly you don't, and then how do you pivot towards that? Because
Well, whose responsibility is it for the qualified prospect?
well, I think it's the rep, and I think it's the rep's leader, right?
Yeah, but I want to go back to something we touched on last week. So, again, in the large enterprise space, if reps only have 1 to 3 accounts, you hear this all the time. Like, I don't have enough accounts, so I don't have enough opportunities. So the lower experienced reps will end up saying, well, I'll just take an unqualified. They may or may not know, right? So some may know that it's unqualified, but continue to pursue it because for some crazy reason they think that having pipeline is going to preserve their job instead of looking at it and going, the only thing that matters in sales is making money. Right? So if you're not making money, you should move on.
So what you're
Figure
saying
out a
is,
better way.
hold on, let's break up what you just said there.
Exactly.
Saying is a rep that has a lot of pipeline might have better job security. True or false?
I think in the short term, it's always true. In the short term, right? But at some time, it's kind of like death and taxes. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you, right? You got to have revenue. So one of two things is going to happen. Either the rep is going to figure out, I either got to do something differently at the current role at the current company that I'm working for in order to convert this pipeline to revenue, or I got to go find a job elsewhere, or management will do it for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as an ops person, if you have a lot of pipeline and none of it converts, and I think as a leader too, eventually I'm going to lose trust in you.
Of course.
And if I lose trust in you, you're gone. Like I'm going to give you discipline freedom. That was one of the good things that came from our one of our previous employers, Pete, discipline freedom. But once I realize you have no discipline,
Key word is the first word.
Yeah, once I realize you have no discipline, you lose the last word, which is freedom.
Yeah, but let's talk about younger people because I get to mentor them. And in some ways, I think maybe for the purposes of this discussion, it's kind of cool to examine, a person in maybe the first 10 years of their sales career. So, I mentioned the last time we talked that, at some of the companies I've worked for, 80% of the reps don't sell anything. So it's not always true that management will fire you if you don't sell. So what I think, what I'm telling certainly when I get to mentor younger people, I'm telling them, hey, you can't rely on your management to teach you better techniques. If you happen to have a frontline manager that's a really good salesperson, God bless you, you're unique, and that's going to be really, really cool. You're going to have to rely on a network and mentors and figure out your own methodology and way to improve your skill sets so you start contributing on revenue and you make money.
So Pete, how many salespeople have you ever estimated how many salespeople you've hired, fired, and promoted at one point that have passed through your doors?
I just remember one time, 2006, seven, I think we had 700 people, something like that.
But how many, like through your whole career
So 10 to 1 ratio, building all the way up, whatever. I remember 50, 60 leaders in a room at a time, whatever.
so like you would have, but that's the largest probably you've ever managed, but probably over your tenure, you've had what, 10,000 reps at one point pass through your door
That
at one
sounds
point,
like a great number. Let's use that.
right? Would you agree with what with what Steve just said? If you don't sell, even if you don't sell, you're not going to get fired in sales.
We got to preface everything with that we have strong leadership, right? Because there has to be integrity in the numbers. Because if you come up with quota, there's got to be a reason why there's a number there, whether it's a billing account or it's new business, whatever it is, there's got to be some rhyme or reason there, and there has to be differentiation. And you can't have a culture of doom or a culture of lax where dead weight can stick around. So in the first 10 years, I believe you'd be, drumming up new business. And if you were good, you would move up. Here's some billing accounts. And, there has to be some rhyme or reason where, besides the rule of 78, where you give somebody a billing account that you add to their quota. Carney, what's the rule of 78?
Oh, I was just about to ask you to tell everyone because I just
Hold on, I thought you're the finance guy, dude.
I know it's we're after it's the account doubles
This is
and
why people don't hit their numbers. Rules of 78. I don't know but Jamie's not unique. Everybody's out there. If you're given a book of business, you're expected, what is it, 112, 212s, 312, 412s, or whatever that's assigned to your quota, isn't it? Isn't that one of the
yeah, it's like 12, 11, 10, something like that, where it's like I think that adds up to 78.
yeah.
What are you
Over
saying? Make it more clear. So
it's where you have to grow. This is a velocity grow
Velocity. There you go. That'll stick.
but this is where you have a velocity sales program where you have to grow your book of business. But in the first
Wait,
month,
wait, what program you don't hold on, Carney. There's a program out there where you don't have to grow your book of business.
well, there's hunters and farmers, which happens a lot in SaaS.
Well, we're talking about farmers billing accounts, right?
Yeah, talking about farmers.
Okay. Continue.
So
You have
that
to grow, you have to
yeah,
grow
but
by 12,000 in the first month, 11,000 in the second month, 10,000 in the third month, and it all adds up. It's cumulative. So in the second month, you really have to grow your book by.
So long story short, you have everybody, somebody quit and you got to give out these accounts, right? So you got the reps, they're like looking at this. I don't want that. I don't want that. Oh, I'll take that one. Right. And they're spending half their time trying to game it to figure out what they're going to keep versus what do you call being strategic. That's the problem. How do you get rid of that crap, that wasted energy?
hey, let me clarify though something. I've never said that management will keep them on in perpetuity. What I'm saying as I'm
Really
coaching,
noted.
yeah, what I'm saying to younger people is at a lot of large companies, management will allow you longer than you should stay. You should be the one that dictates whether or not and understands what's the conditions I'm under right now. In other words, am I working for a company with a set of accounts where if I was smarter and more experienced, I could make money? Or am I in some sort of situation where it's untenable? And, I think I cited, so look, we talked about this last time. If you look at, say, Fortune 1000 accounts, and your penetration after 20 years is 700 of the Fortune 1000. There's big institutional reasons why you haven't done business with those remaining 300 accounts. And if you're a rep and that's all you're given, you're not given one of those accounts that continually buys year over year from your company. You're in a situation where if you look at statistical probability, for whatever reason, you're probably not going to be successful. This comes back to this, we can tie this into qualifying, right? Yeah. The other thing, you guys just
what should you do there in that situation?
You shouldn't take the job.
But what if you didn't know? Like I
understand.
What if you didn't know at the time and you get in there and you realize, oh, I was given this shit accounts. These guys must hate me or something. Like they're giving me accounts that no one's been able to sell into, and there's reasons. What do you do? Quit?
Probably.
Like, I mean, I would say back in like the first part, if you're doing everything that the company's asking you to do and you're not able to sell, and there's other people in the company that aren't doing what they're asking to do and they're not able to sell, they're going to fire obviously the person that's not what the company's asking for.
You hop around like every 2 years like everybody else.
Then again, what?
You hop around every 2 years like everybody else because nobody knows what the hell that they're doing. Whose job is it to assign opportunity?
Well, you guys are assuming that the management or operations has really good ability to determine who's going to buy in the future. I think the market's changed. I mean, when I started, on the enterprise side 20 years ago, and again, I had, more sales experience, there were definitely what I would call house accounts where there were some salespeople that had it so easy. These types of large global companies were saying, hey, we're going to spend $10-20 million a year. And then what we need from the account team is we need you to curate what we buy. So we're going to tell you what our goals and objectives are. And then we want you to slot in the solutions that you guys provide that would provide the highest value relative to the goals and objectives we have over the next year. I mean, that was like being a professional shopper, right? Where, if you go into a clothing store and you tell them as a guy, hey, I want to buy 3 suits, and you walk out of there with 3 suits. Did he sell you 3 suits or did he help you pick out 3 suits? I don't think he sold me 3 suits because I went there with the intent of buying.
I don't know how things have changed, but let's just say in the last 24, let's see, CRO lasts, a year and a half. So let's just talk about an 18 months at a time. In the last 18 months, somebody is renewed or somebody is bought new. There has to be some type of commonalities in NAC code, company size, revenue, something. Is that true? Yes or no, Carney?
I think people buy from people, so I don't think it's I don't think it's as much.
How do you scale that?
It's very difficult. But I think that's where we've come. I mean,
hope's not a strategy, so nothing can scale.
I know it's really difficult to sell in certain stuff. If you have the right product that has crazy amount of demand, then that's good. If you're in a commoditized or in a very competitive, noisy space, it's all about getting to the right person at the company.
If there's a defined market for that space, right? So that's the thing. Like, by the way, you guys mentioned something. I don't want to take us off on too big of a tangent.
Go ahead. Who cares? Nobody's watching.
Look, there's a huge difference between farmers and hunters. One of the things I think is crazy is you go out, let's say the company, because certain ones do this, which they have hunters that bring on net new accounts, and then they transition them to a farmer. And then churn has been, in the SaaS world, churn's been a big deal, right? For a lot of companies, they're fighting churn. But here's where I think the mismatch is. What happens when somebody brings on an account as a hunter, you transition it to a farmer, and then your competition sends in a hunter? Who wins between a hunter and a farmer?
Well,
One has a shovel and one has a gun. Who wins?
Hunter.
The hunter wins. The farmer barely gets his shovel off the ground before he's dropped cold dead.
well, the
And so I
hunters,
think
the
the
hunters
company,
lying through their teeth to get them to buy, and they throw it over the fence.
like, so let's break down a typical sale, right?
Okay. Oh, there's a typical sale. So it
Yeah,
is scalable.
exactly.
So
Well,
there's commonalities, Steve.
no, let me say it this way. Every deal I've ever won has been a lot closer than everyone would imagine. In other words, if there was a selection committee, and back in the days when there were, I think there still are some, even if you're best in class and there's 7 people on the selection committee, you'll win 4-3. You might win 5-2. But let's say it's 5-2. That means there's still 2 adversaries. There's 2 people who didn't get what they want. And they're going to basically approach this and they're going to say, yeah, I'm a team player. We made the decision. But behind the scenes, they're going to be contacting or staying in touch with the competition. And every time you fall down, they're going to offload that all those mistakes and missteps to the competition. And then sooner or later, enough time's going to elapse where the competition's going to have a book of all the missteps and all these things. And they're going to get to the right executive and they're going to go, you guys made the wrong decision. This is the group of people that did this. It's cost your company a lot of money. This is the ROI that they promised. Because I've been the guy that said this stuff before. Like, you're going to have to step in because the people that made this decision are covering their tracks and it's not as good a solution as was advertised. That's the hunter-farmer paradigm, so to speak.
And the person that bought it isn't at that company anymore.
That's correct. That's correct. And then so you can come in as a hunter and you can say, yeah, the people that bought this, of course, they're not there. There's no historical, person that's still there. So it's perfectly safe for you guys to recalibrate and make a new decision.
Isn't that up to the sales scientists? What do you guys call them now? The solutions people, the in-between?
What do you mean? Because we could, are you talking about ROI people, business case people?
I don't know. You guys have made it so convoluted convoluted, is that a word?
No, that is
Somebody
not.
sold it.
Are you looking for
Given to somebody else to manage it? It's that managing part.
CSMs?
CSMs, customer success managers.
Okay, success people. So that's still a term that's out there. Okay.
It is. Absolutely.
Is it their job to keep an eye on changes of people at the company that bought it?
Yes.
It is. But I also think they get
Doesn't
to a
sound
little
like
bit of what ends up happening with a lot of CSMs is kind of the Stockholm syndrome. Like they start representing the captors and not their
Who do
own
you work
company.
for?
Yep. And they start, I mean, I've had this discussion so many times with CSMs where I've said, hey, when you get your paycheck, what company does it say on the paycheck? And they're like, piss off, Steve, blah, 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 blah. No. I want you and I work for the same company. Let's be totally clear on that.
Mhm. I think they're also creatures of habit, right?
So do you need them anymore?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so. I mean, in a
You
SaaS
haven't
world,
sold me yet.
you
Well, here's the reason why do CSMs exist. Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about your experience with CSMs. Why do they exist?
Trying to concentrate your labor on specific tasks.
try
You're trying to
user adoption.
You're trying to have like a rep, like you said, a hunter rep is out there trying to sell through their teeth and say whatever they can to get someone to do it, right?
You're mildly implying that they're lying.
I am
I'm
totally.
taking Pete's
I'm
words.
saying they're lying.
I'm taking Pete's
No, you
words.
are.
I'm saying, fine. I'm not going to argue about that. I'm going to say, hey, they'll sell the future, the product roadmap, and all of that, which you could say you're lying through your teeth.
Yep.
Yeah, they're sometimes selling for the future because they're hoping the future is tomorrow, not
Correct.
a year from now,
Yeah,
right?
I'm working for the
Then
next company.
CSMs are there to try to try to help bridge that gap between what they were sold. Because you got to remember, I say orange, the customer might hear Apple. So the CSM's role is to make sure that even though the customer might have misinterpreted what I said, they're trying to bring them back to the orange and say, this is where we're at today. And this is how you can use it today based on all of the other customers that are using us today. And this is what success would mean today. I'm not going to talk to you about the future yet. I'm just going to say the future is coming. And so ground base it in reality. And what should happen there is they then get more user adoption in there. And that is not an easy thing to do because a rep who's usually selling the future will go in and continue to sell the future and they'll just say, you guys never promise you guys never deliver on what you promise. Whereas the CSM's trying to reset the playing field and say, we are delivering what I am resetting what we can do today, and I'm going to tell you what we can do tomorrow. I think the disconnect here is that a lot of CSMs are going in there and are creatures of habit, and they're hearing Apple from the customer, and then they're coming back and saying, "You lied to them. You did this," and they sort of align with the customer rather than trying to reset the customer's expectations on what reality is today. And that's where the disconnect always is. They're not driving to get them to.
So the customer service manager isn't there in the closing call to make sure the handoff on expectations is there?
Not typically in a software because the implementation team is there. They're there
Yeah,
after it gets
same
implemented.
thing. All right, how about this? Why doesn't the whole team get paid? Why is there one salesperson? Why isn't it the whole team?
Well, everyone gets paid on
Well, they're not carrying a quota.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like the salesperson is being held responsible for the work of somebody else in which he doesn't control. So my question is, if it's a team effort, why isn't it a team pay?
Oh, you're back to he always Steve, he always goes back to this.
It's the same game, gazillion years, same stuff. You go to 1920, it's the same stuff that's going on. So now it's just the only difference now, it's more complicated. So now let's go back to Aristotle, ethos, logos, pathos. Do you remember that, Carney?
Yeah,
I think let me see if I can remember this. Logos is the logic, what's the reason why you're buying it?
Yep.
I think pathos is don't be a douchebag, be likable. And ethos is the perception of the other person that you're trying to influence. Okay. Maybe Aristotle didn't use the word douchebag.
I don't think douchebag was like I remember in SNL they introduced the inventors of douchebags.
So, I think people get lost in the logic of look, you're buying this to make your life better, whether it's saving time or money or something. There's got to be a number in there, right? And everybody has to get on the same page, and nobody can get on the same page because everybody's numbers are different. Blah, 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 blah. If it's a good product, okay, if you're a sales team, what do you got? HubSpot and Salesforce, anything else? Excel?
Oh, sales team? Oh God, you have 10 to 20 sales tools now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That largely don't help you sell.
Right. But they still go to Excel, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you mean the forecast. Typically the forecast does.
Ultimately goes to Excel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I try to oversimplify, but help me understand, Steve. So, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? You're still doing it. This is why I'm not doing it anymore. Number one, nobody will hire me.
Look, the salesperson has to be responsible for essentially everything in the sense of, I'm going to go sell the deal, right? I'm going to sell the deal. I'm going to manage the transition to the professional implementation team and customer success. And I'm still going to manage the experience. So I need to be cognizant of how it's going. And at some point, I need to take those same skill sets, those same points of view, and the same, for lack of better words, controversial approach, going back to some of the executives and saying, hey, look, we sold you this solution to provide this benefit, and the trajectory that your team is on, you're not going to get the benefit. And I'm asking for an intervention. And by the way, over the years, this is what I've seen over and over that the CSM teams won't do. And even professional services. Professional services typically will always say, what do they want? Like they need to tell us what they want. And my comment to that is, if they knew what they wanted, they would have already done this. It's up to us to tell them what they need, not what they want. Those are two different things.
To add to what you're just saying there, I always feel like this is a major disconnect in the whole process here. The person that buys from you, Steve, knows what they want, right? What their ultimate outcome they want out of this. This is why they bought. This is why they put their name on it. Then they hand it off to the implementation team, and they hand it off to their people that are supposed to work it, who may not want it or may not know exactly why their boss bought it. And so then they go into the implementation meeting, and they both everyone just sort of looks at each other and says, what do you want? I don't know. What do you do? You know what I mean? Like, can you just implement what I saw in that demo 6 months ago? Even though that might not be the ultimate goal of what the person who bought it for is. And there's a disconnect always there. I feel like that's the biggest problem we have, is that we tend to think that just because the leader bought it, that leader was able to communicate the value and what they want out of it to the people that are actually using it. And that's not always the case.
Absolutely agree with that. It's not always the case.
Now back to our other question is, all right, qualify and unqualify. What techniques can you do as a rep today to disqualify fast, I guess? And then what do you do I'll follow up after you go through that, but how do you qualify quickly?
By the way, this is so timely because Jesse and I had a call this morning with a prospect, and I asked the question, do you guys want to solve? So I stated it this way. We provide engagement accuracy. Like, we automate it, we capture the engagement. That's going to better inform your pipeline, your deal progression, and the accuracy of your forecast. And then what was classic is I said, do you guys make the call? Yeah, and you guys know what I mean by making the call. So almost every company I've worked for, let's say you're in a management position, it doesn't matter what level. In other words, you have a team, or you're managing 3 or 4 or 5 managers who have teams. They enforce a policy around, at the end of the day, just tell me, Jamie, Pete, what number are you going to deliver? And I'm like, making the call is bullshit, because it takes all the science and all the art out of the individual deals. Because you just say, Pete, Jamie, you guys are responsible for a number. You got to tell me what the number is. What it doesn't inform the management or leadership or the company is you never look at efficiency and accuracy. Because you don't look at the totality of all the deals. You don't look at it and say, wow, out of 10 deals that we committed, we only closed 3 of them. But if those 3 deals you make the number, no one talks about how the 7 deals that were committed didn't happen, because they made the number on the 3 deals that did.
Oh, that's where you're wrong. They do talk about that quite a bit.
It doesn't hit the sales desk.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It hits it when you are no longer have a job.
But see, I think going to the qualifying thing, the best thing I can do at the beginning of a deal or a sales cycle, before it's really even a sales cycle, is I need to ask if you guys are my prospects, I'm going to go, Pete, Jamie, generally speaking, here's the problem I can solve. Do you guys want to solve that problem? There's this assumption in sales today that every executive wants to make their organization better than it was yesterday. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. Not that I think that for the most part, yeah, maybe top of mind, they want to make it better. But if it requires massive transformation and a lot of gnashing of teeth, that you're going to make your whole management organization, amend or dramatically change their style or their approach, there's this reverberations, and the executive at the top of that has to be willing to preside over it and demand that the change is going to happen, regardless of how much pain it inflicts on the people underneath. And I don't see a lot of people doing that today. If you go back to what we said earlier, they're like, well, if I'm only going to be in the job for 18 or 19 months, why would I go make all these changes? Because even if I'm successful, it's my replacement that's going to see the benefits of it.
How many people worked on the Manhattan Project? I think 130,000. And, we figured out how to make a nuclear bomb, fission, fusion.
Yes.
13, 14 million people in sales in the United States, and we can't figure this shit out.
I don't, because again, I'm going to keep coming back to this. My collective experience is we all want to lie to each other. So we want to hire too many salespeople, and then there's not enough prospects or customers relative to that organization's TAM. And then you've got a bunch. So then that creates this cascading effect of people creating opportunities to show that they're busy and they're not properly qualifying them. And I mentioned this the last time we talked. I've seen in the last 20 years, I've seen complete inversion over what it used to be in the past, where 20 years ago, my sales leadership was like, Steve, please get out of that account. Do not step foot in that account again. Those guys suck. We're done. We're not spending any resources. We are not going out there. To now it's like, well, we need to figure it out. They hate our company. There's 25 executives that hate us. We need to figure it out. So when we talk about qualifying, there's so many layers to qualifying. Should the prospect have even been assigned to anybody in the first place? That's one, right?
Well, okay. Number one, whose responsibility is number one? Is that marketing or sales?
It's sales ops.
Okay. Sales ops is under CRO.
I mean, in my experience, marketing's never made a decision on account assignment. They might have informed sales leadership and sales ops about where we should all be hunting. But when it comes down to account assignment, I've never seen marketing have any.
Also remember,
hold on. If you're doing a trade show and you get the leads and you hand them out, it's marketing's budget handing out the leads to sales. There's no correlation to that.
No, marketing is responsible for drumming up the leads, but sales ops and the sales leadership.
I'm just saying CRO, whatever the convoluted process is on that. I'm trying to figure out why we want to pay somebody that costs a lot of money to do this work that a marketing person could do or advertising could do.
Nah, let's tie that in with qualifying.
Yeah.
Right? So every time I look around, when I go to these giant conferences today, like the big companies, Salesforce would be a good example, Oracle, SAP, does anyone not know who they are? Like, let's get real about why people are going to one of their customer conferences.
It's a golf course.
I mean, I'm going to argue that people don't go there to decide that they want to become a customer. They go there because they're already a customer. It's a fun event. I mean, we have all this technology today. There's better information on the web. Here's a stat that's such a contradiction to these customer conferences anyway. Well, 60% of the buyer's decision is already made before any salesperson engages them. Well, then what the heck is the customer conference for? Like if they already know you exist and they already know you have a solution, and it's not hard, like to get a sales team to engage you or the marketing team. All you've got to do is any sort of query. Everybody's website's like, do you want somebody to contact you? If you hit that button, you're going to have more people contact you than you ever wanted. Right? So
Yeah.
then I keep going back to the qualifying, like, is a rep supposed to talk to everybody that's interested? Because a lot of times what you're doing is you're educating somebody. Somebody wants to get smarter on a subject matter. And it could be anything. It could be HCM, supply chain, now AI. I think most of the reps don't know, are they selling or are they educating?
So here's the question I got. Let's noodle on that because I'm dealing with that today. Should a rep contact anyone that you only have 5 to 10 accounts, strategic key accounts, anyone that raises their hand says, I'm interested in learning more about your business. Should that rep be responsible for following up with that person?
Sounds like it.
I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it. I swear the difference between experienced, successful track record salespeople is I've had so many people tell me this. I'm not qualifying the customer, I'm qualifying the person that I'm meeting with. And they're going to have to show me something when I meet. And they're not going to know that I'm doing that. And then in terms of qualifying, they're really, really smart. They're going to say, Pete, have you ever bought anything at your company? Have you bought anything? Do you know, instead of asking what's the process? Oh, if you have bought something, Pete, what was that like for you? What did you have to go through to get it done? Because it's not just that I want to find out what the steps are for you to get approval. I want to find out how powerful you are, you want to project, right? Like we talked about this the last time, like InfoSec. I still contend if I'm an executive at a company, it's InfoSec's job to help me buy it. It's not InfoSec's job to prevent me from buying it. So if I'm selling to that person or that executive, I'm acutely listening to like, are they a person who's going to be, are they compliant? Are they going to, when they hit a bump in the road, whether it's InfoSec or any other department that tells them there's an impediment to buying something, are they going to steamroll them or are they going to capitulate? What is it they're going to do? I want the steamroller person. I want the person who I've always said this. I love when somebody says, that guy's an asshole. Oh, really? Why? Well, that guy always gets what he wants. And he doesn't care what anyone else thinks. Can you give me the phone number? Phone number and email, please? That's the person I want to meet because they're going to get their shit. Whatever they want to buy, they're going to get it. And yeah, they might leave a trail of carnage, but I get a deal.
Going back to ethos, logos, pathos, hold on. I would love to see Steve on one side with ChatGPT, and I'd love to see Carney on the other side with Grok. And you guys do all this bullshit and see which comes out at the end on the logic side of things. Because on every call, somebody's buying or selling. And what I'm hearing it is nothing is scalable because it's all up to the individual's person's influence that's closest to the call. And if that's the case, then why I'm getting back to pay at risk and team pay and all that.
Yeah. But look, when I have a great year and people are complaining about how much money I made, it's like, yeah, but you're paying me, right? There's an old cliche. Plumber comes out and fixes something in 5 minutes and says it's $250. And the person says, oh my God, I can't believe you charged me $250 to change something or fix something that took you 5 minutes. Why is that? Like, how do you break that down?
It's better with a dentist.
And the plumber goes, well, it was $225 because I know how to fix it. It was $25 to fix it. So your total's $250, right? And so
I could pull your tooth a lot slower.
I'm not worried about being replaced with AI in the large enterprise space because it'll never, no matter how much we try to apply science and sales process to this, it's always going to come down to finding that person who wants to buy what I want to sell and has the chutzpah to go get it and do whatever it takes to get it. And AI is not going to identify that. It's not. It comes down to people. Look, guys, have you ever broken down why do you buy something? Pete, why do you buy something?
Steve, I hear you, brother. I was just talking about the logic because it's like you go to Vegas and you pull the slot machine handle. You need cherry, cherry, cherry. You can get logos, you can get pathos, but that ethos, right? You don't know the other person that you're dealing with. So if you don't have all three cherries, I get where you're coming from. That's the rub. So my question is, who's responsible for figuring out what a qualified lead is? Because if you have a very expensive person that's getting 300 grand, whatever the number you guys throw out there, that says, hey, I'd like to learn more about your product. Do you really want that 300 grand person taking that call? That's all that I'm saying.
Hey, the people involved in that is all of marketing and all of sales. It's not revenue operations. It's not sales ops. They might get it started, but the reality is it's a constant tweak that goes on that you need to get feedback from the sales person, the sales rep, and say, that's a shitty lead. This is a shitty. But the real problem comes into play. Hold on.
Go up the hierarchy.
Yeah. So a sales rep has to communicate that. Sales leader has to communicate that all the way through so that we can hear that feedback. The biggest problem, though, is back to the beginning, is that some of these reps are so desperate for any type of pipeline that when they get a bad lead, they still latch onto it and work it because they can't disqualify it and say no and say that's a bad lead. And so therefore, there's mixed signals across the board because when you're hiring on reps, some reps have the ability to go in and go, bullshit lead, and just say, boom, I'm done. That ain't happening. And some reps will do it and yell to everyone going, don't you dare waste my time again. When it's our best guess of
why is that allowed to happen?
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? I've got an opinion on this, like everything else.
Why is that allowed to happen? Because they're getting paid a lot of money to go find a real deal. And
because you said so.
When you waste their time, and they're also an asshole, but when you waste their time in saying you need to follow up and you're scoring them on their follow-up and they're like, this is bullshit. But there's so many other reps out there that are afraid to speak their mind because they're afraid that means I can't figure out how to create my own pipeline. And I'm so desperate for these leads, turn them into something that therefore they're sending the bad signals to the marketing team that, hey, this is going on. What you actually need is just candid feedback all the way through, and the process needs to be tweaked across.
So it's the recruiter's fault? Is that what you're saying? Long-winded way that the recruiter sent you bad?
Always HR's fault. Yes. Well, that's assumed. But yeah, but no, I would say, and then you got to remember on the other end, the marketing team wants to create as many MQLs as possible. And so therefore they want to make sure that when somebody comes back and says, this is a bullshit lead, they'll say, no, it isn't, because it hits these qualifications. And you need to be strong enough to say, I don't care.
Okay. Not your company, but go up. Okay. So you got sales apps, whatever you are, you got sales reps, whatever Steve is, keep going up in the hierarchy. Could you make go to the top of the triangle? Who's reporting to who in this?
Well, sales reps report into sales leaders. Sales leaders report into VP of sales of North America, VP of sales of Europe, whatever it is. Then you go up, it's typically the CRO,
Yeah.
who then, in some cases, the CRO sees
Is this
oversee.
dotted line to marketing? Where does marketing go to?
Sometimes marketing falls. I think marketing should fall under the CRO's purview.
Okay.
I think
Basically, everything you
that's
said
rare.
is full of crap.
Jamie, that's rare. That's rare.
I'm telling
That's
you though,
rare.
I agree. I know it's rare, but I think the reason why the CRO should oversee everything on the go-to-market side. The problem is a lot of the CROs are VP of sales and they're not really true operators. So they get up into the marketing side, then they either over-index on marketing because they think this is cool, but somebody who has 5-10 years of marketing experience is already well beyond them in terms of understanding. So this is where the CRO is actually, in my opinion, the COO is more important than the CRO, but a lot of companies now go CRO and look for the sales leader to do this stuff. Whereas the COO typically is brought up through the operational aspect, and they can run the sales side as well as this, because when you get up to that level, you're not really running individual sales plays. You're sort of running the strategy.
Who's running the drip campaign? Who's making the flyers? Where does that all go? CRO?
Under marketing,
That's
under
that's usually marketing. But let's talk about a scenario that happens a lot in tech.
But my problem, hold on, I'll let you guys go for the rest of the show.
Okay.
If it doesn't go to one person, if you got the CRO over here and the marketing person over there,
I see where you're going.
It's their fault.
Yes.
Exactly.
And you run into nothing. Continue.
Well, that's exactly why I say the CRO should be in charge of everything, because then you can't blame each other.
Pete, that's a good point, right? Where does the buck stop? And so you've got this bifurcated go-to-market outreach going on between these various groups, and nobody owns the whole thing.
Sales sucks, marketing sucks.
Yep. And you're right. It's this, right? And they're pointing at each other. Yeah, I mean, look, there's one of the basic things that I've seen between tech companies, which is crazy to me, is marketing will look at it and say, is our solution or service a fit for this targeted company? And maybe they do a drip campaign. What they don't do is they don't look down the hallway and figure out that there's a legal action because there's an intellectual property lawsuit between our two companies. So we're not going to sell to this company because we're in a sometimes multi-billion dollar, I've been down this avenue before. We're in a multi-billion dollar lawsuit with them. When you're in a multi-billion dollar lawsuit, they're not buying from you.
Would that be an outlier though, Steve?
What's that?
Would that be an outlier?
In tech, it's more common.
You know what I mean? Somebody says, well, I don't want that one. It's not because, whoa, damn, we got a lawsuit.
So let's look at it holistically.
Yeah.
I've helped people sell into Oracle. And Oracle has, and I like this, they have hey, we eat our own dog food, which is great. Like they try to deploy and utilize as many of their solutions as possible. They also have some solutions that haven't been touched for 30 years. And so, there's a corporate policy that says, well, we have to use our 30-year-old. It's not written that way, but this is how it plays out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your solution's not a fit for us because it's competitive to one of our products, even though it's 30 years old. The point is that the vertical that I've been most closely associated with it, which is tech, there's all kinds. It goes back to those, 300 accounts in the Fortune 1000 that you're not doing business with. And this is where I think great enterprise reps are awesome, is they have this ability to navigate, do the forensics, and find out what's really going on. So if we tie this into qualifying, what I see with, especially again with younger people, they're being trained. This is the product. This is the solution fit area. This is the competitive landscape. And then they're going in and they're qualifying to that, but they're not cognizant of those other things. You ever see the Rodney Dangerfield movie where it's back to school and he's sitting in the classroom and the prof's talking about, we're going to create a company. And Rodney's like, where? And he's like, it doesn't matter. It could be anywhere. And he goes, oh yeah, it matters, right? Like If it's in New York City, you got like the Teamsters Union and they ain't the Boy Scouts. And he's going through the real world scenarios of all the stuff that you got to do to run a company based on the geography and the company that you're in and the space you're in. But we're not training salespeople this. So then they get in the large enterprise. I keep coming back to we train salespeople like it's the SMB and mid-market where the complexity is not great. But there's so many competing interests. And when we talk about qualifying, it's what else? It's not just, is my product or service a fit for you? That's a check mark. Would it be great value to you? That's a check mark. Then who else are you competing with at your company for resources? I mean, CIOs will tell you all the time they're capacity constrained. So they can only manage if there's heavy usage of IT involved to deploy and implement the solution, IT's got a backlog. So even if the account team goes in and convinces somebody they want to buy it, it may be 6 months or a year before IT has the physical resources to help them implement it and put it into action. No one's qualifying for those kind of things.
I would say for the Fortune 100, I would argue that people like to make it complicated. It's really just a whole bunch of SMEs together, a whole bunch of different buying units that you have to keep calling and get on. And I think people get lost in that. What you're saying is a differentiation. There's a differentiation between one company's rep and another company's rep. And it sounds to me the differentiation is on the marketing and the relationship side. Relationship side can help on re-upping a deal because of the relationship is there. But the incentive for companies these days is to not have the same rep on the same account, to move them to somebody else, and it breaks the relationship. Is that still going on, or is it more of the churn of the buyers and the sellers?
So let's talk about the relationship, right? Like, I think it's more important to have account knowledge almost more than relationships. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. Years ago, I would ask somebody, I would go, "Hey, Pete, I'm selling into your company. Will you introduce me to some folks?" And then you would introduce me to some folks who are friends or you know them well. And then at some point, one of those, your friends tells me, "Hey, Steve, it's a little dicey right now. Just came from an executive meeting. You know, we're gonna tighten up spending, whatever the hindrance is. I need you to back off a little bit. I need you to back off." And this is my example of where a relationship actually hurts. So somewhere in my career, I migrated to, hey Pete, if you introduce me to people, what I'm going to tell them is when your knees get wobbly and you start to buckle, I'm going to go around you and over you like water on a rock. And when you come and ask me to stop, I'm going to laugh because I'm going to be like the Terminator. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to find other people that will help get this deal done. And if this makes you nervous, I would suggest you don't attach your name to me because sooner or later, I'm going to have to break glass to get shit done. And if that makes you nervous, you shouldn't be my sponsor. That's the kind of stuff that's not being taught anymore. It's
But
like people want to nice their way into a deal. You're not going to nice your way into a deal.
But you're sort of framing that on the onset. Hey, this is what's going to happen. This is how I'm going to operate.
That's correct.
I think what really comes into play though is they've said no for no reason, or their reason is so flawed.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you.
Which happens a lot. You spend all this time, and at the end of the day, they say, "Well,
Because they're a wimp. What they don't want to say,
not
Jamie,
prioritized. Oh, you're
Steve,
not
I'm
in the
telling you
priority."
no because I don't have the stones to do this. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, everything sounds great. So what do you do?
Well, you and I talked yesterday, and one thing we haven't brought up is I'm a huge advocate of get to know fast.
Mhm.
Like there's too much time spent. If you think about it, no matter what you're selling, there's a value prop and there's a list of problems or use cases that you're solving. Doesn't matter what company you work for, that's always going to be true because you got to have some value. Your company has to be solving some problems. How many meetings do you guys think it should take before somebody, I'm not asking them to commit, but personally, I think after 3 or 4 meetings, unless I'm just a knucklehead and I'm not presenting it well, they should be in a place and space where they can say, directionally, Steve, I'm on board. Like I'm not committing to signing a deal with you, but I'm on board. Why are reps having 20 and 30 and 50 meetings with some buying group when that group, they don't have budget, they don't have approval to fix the problem. And my point is the reps are over investing on people who have given them no commitment that they'll get to a fork in the road where it's yes, we're going forward or no.
But isn't that a drop down in Salesforce?
No, I don't think it is.
What?
You mean the yes or no?
These same reps that you're talking about, are they also in charge of sending out their own emails?
Mostly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you basically have 100 different marketing companies out there. I mean, different pitches, different methodologies, different.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to remember there are actually tools out there that will help you with this.
Yeah.
Where
Eating your own dog food.
They'll help you get to the.
No, that's not our tool.
Let's face it. In the large enterprise space, they'll help you get to more worthless people faster.
So
that's what they're really, really good at. And so if we go back to the rep who's never going to sell anything, that has a whole bunch of pipeline, but they never close anything, then there's a bunch of tools that are really good helping them set up meetings with totally worthless people.
Steve, you've been around 20 years. Okay.
Well, yeah, more.
How long did it take you to figure out a rep was good or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought so when I got to SAP in 2004, I thought I was good. Yeah. I was already well into my sales career.
Yeah.
And it redefined for me. I was just talking to one of my cohorts who's over at Google, and she said, that is the finest sales organization I've ever seen in my life collectively. What we experienced back in 2004. And what I saw was reps going, they embraced the whole, because you hear like, you're the quarterback, you're the CEO. And I watched in QBRs and meetings, I watched reps go, hey, we're doing this my way. This is how this is going to go down. I'm not asking you for your opinion. This is what's happening. Pete, you're my boss. This is what you're going to do. Your boss, the reps are like, this is what you're going to do.
Steve, it's 2024. Tell me, how long does it take you now to figure out if they come on, they do the sales training, they come on
in an hour. In an hour.
Okay. How long does it take you to find out you got a bad hire?
2 hours.
Okay. And then how long does it take you to get to what's the fancy word, to outsource them or the out-train them? What do you call it?
Oh, manage them out.
Manage them out. Yeah. How long does it take you? It takes you 2 hours to figure out, oops, I got to get rid of this person. How long are they staying at the company?
A year.
6 months to a year.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. So.
But this is why, Pete, back to your point on app pay.
There's no point. It's like you can't get rid of people.
You can't get rid of people nowadays, and at the same time,
why not? By the way,
when you say risk get pay or whatever, we should pay them the full amount. The problem is, the reality is, Steve, you're a rep. How many reps do you think are really?
It's a small group. It's a small group, but hey, we're going to run out of time. But Pete, here's the funny thing. I have a friend of mine. fairly high up at AWS. When he joined AWS, he was in his first interview. They have this fancy, it's called the loop. Blah,
Bezos
blah, blah.
didn't wait a year.
So he did a background check, which is what I always do. You go on LinkedIn, we're interviewing a candidate, and you call 3 or 4 people that know this person, and you get the bio, right? AWS is like, no, we don't do that. We do not do that. We're going to go through our rigid interview process, and we're going to figure it out. Now they figured it, like, I'm not going to argue with them. It's a good company and they got all the shit going on, right?
Yeah.
But look, we now live in a world. My father-in-law likes to talk about this. He goes, my son-in-law's never met a stranger, because his point is he's long since retired. He was a tech exec.
Yeah.
Whenever possible, when I'm going to meet somebody, if I go on LinkedIn, I see who your contacts are, and I call 2 or 3 people if I know them well enough, and I go, tell me about Pete. And I kind of have a bio on you before I've ever met you. So
if they'll talk to you, that means it's a good reference. If they won't, it's not.
Or sometimes they'll
you got to talk to HR.
That dude is a piece of shit, right? Like, I mean, it could be that. Like, that's my
Somebody's going to say that today.
Oh, dude,
that's something I'd say.
My peer network will, right? The people that I trust, right? Like, and so bad hires to me, bad hires are almost by design. In other words, either there's so much pressure on the hiring manager to fill a slot that they fill the slot.
No breath is better than bad breath.
Correct. And so, come on, guys, if you're, maybe it's a crapshoot on people in the first 10 years of your career, but at some point, in the 10 to 20 or certainly 20 to 30 years that somebody's been, there shouldn't be any guesswork in terms of what you're hiring.
It sounds like next podcast we should be talking about the HR function.
Yeah, you mean
and why we need them. Why we need HR.
I like it because I think look, kind of tying this all in together.
Yeah.
Qualifying sets the stage for accurate forecasting and probably even successful implementation and deployment, as we've touched on. Then when we're hiring, like, you kind of know what you're getting. You should know what you're getting when you hire the person.
No, you don't.
You should.
They're better at their job than you are at yours. They've been interviewing more than you have. You know what I mean? Especially the sales managers at the first level. Look, we're at time. I get it. We got a whole nother hour worth of crap for next week, boys. Another episode of the SAASholes.
All right, guys. Woo.
All right, boys.
Take care.
Great job, Carney. Once again.
Bye.